welcome back to my channel. My name is Teresa. Thank you so much for clicking. It means so much. So this is episode 4 for the Twilight Saga Official Illustrated Guide, and this is a read with me, and we're going to continue in this awesome official illustrated guide by Stephanie Meyer. Okay, let's get into it. We have Shannon Hill interviewing Stephanie Meyer. So I'll say Shannon and then I'll say Steph. Shannon. No, I totally understand that. I remember hearing writers talk about how their characters are almost alive and almost have a will of their own. And I thought they were kind of full of crap. Stephanie laughs. But then there's something to it. I think that it's a balance though. There's an idea of these characters that are alive in my mind, and then there's me, the author. I have some power to control the story, to try and make it a strong story, but then the characters also have some power to say no. Stephanie. Yeah. Shannon. For me, writing is finding a balance between that sort of transcendental story and my own power of writing. Not letting myself overwrite them too much. Not letting myself overrun me. Not letting them overrun me. Stephanie. Yeah, see, I find that difficult because to me, you create the character, you define them, and you make them who they are. And you get to shape them into what they are in the final. Their story isn't, but they are who they are, and they do feel real. You can't change who they are to make the story go easier. So sometimes things happen in the story because my character's being who he is, I can't do anything different. I've written him so tightly into who he is that I cannot change his course of action without feeling like, well, that's not in the character. That's not what he would do. There's only one course now. And sometimes it's hard when the course goes away. That's difficult to write. Oh my gosh, so crazy. Okay, on characters coming to life. Shannon. So how much did you know about Jacob and his future when you were writing Twilight? Stephanie. Jacob was an afterthought. He wasn't supposed to exist in the original story. No Hottie McHottie pants? That's what I called him. Okay. When I wrote the second half of Twilight first, there was no Jacob character. He started to exist after the point where I kind of hit a bit of a wall. I could not make Edward say the words, "I'm a vampire." There was no way that was ever coming out of his mouth. He couldn't do it. And that goes back to where we're talking about characters. You know, he had been keeping the truth about himself secret for so long. It was something he was so unhappy about and devastated about. He would have never been able to tell her. And so I thought, how is Bella ever going to figure this out? But I had picked Forks already as the story's location. And so then I thought, you know, these people have been around for a while and they've been to this area before. Have they left tracks, footprints somewhere that she can discover an older story to give her insight? That's when I discovered that there was a little reservation of the Quileute Indians on the coastline. I was interested in them, and before I even knew it, I was going to work them into the story. I thought, oh, that's interesting. There's a real dense and different kind of history there. I've always kind of been fascinated with the Native American history, and this was a story I had never heard before. This is a very small tribe, and it's really not very well known. Their language is different from anyone else's. They have these great legends, even one that is similar to the Noah's Ark story. The Quileutes tied their canoes to the tops of the tallest trees so that they weren't swept away by the big flood, and I thought that was really interesting. And they have a wolf legend. The story goes that they descended from wolves. A magician changed the first Quileute from a wolf into a man. That's how they began. And when I was reading the legend, I thought, you know, that's kind of funny because I know werewolf people and vampires don't get along. And how funny would it be if there was a story right here next to where I set my vampire story? Oh my gosh, that's so cool. Shannon, that's so cool. That kind of serendipity that happens in storytelling. Stephanie, It felt like now it's on. Now I know how it has to be, what kismet to happen. And so Jacob was born as a device really to tell Bella what she needed to know. And yet, as soon as I gave him life and gave him a chance to open his mouth, I just found him endearing. He took on this personality that was so funny and easy, and you love the characters that you don't have to work for. And Jacob was not an ounce of work. He came to life and was exactly what I wanted him to be. I just enjoyed him as a person, and his appearance in chapter 6 was really it. That was all he was in the story. And then my agent loved Jacob, and she's never gotten over that. She was 100% Team Jacob all the time. Okay, it's kind of funny. So I started out as Team Jacob, I think because I saw the movies first and I thought Taylor Lautner was really hot. And then as the movies continued, I became Team Edward, and now I am Team Edward. What a world would it be if we knew all the legends around us were absolutely true? Shannon. And you know, I am too. I love Jacob. Stephanie. Oh, I love Jacob too. But when my agent said, I want some more of him, I thought, you know, I'd love to do that, but I don't want to mess with it too much. I wanted to have my editor's input before I started making any major changes. And my editor felt the same way. You know, I like this. Are you gonna go somewhere with this wolf story? And when I started the sequel, I knew there was gonna be werewolves in it, because it just seemed like all these stories of pure fantasy that are myths that are coming true for Bella. And then there's Jacob. Here's this world that he just thinks is a silly superstition. Then I thought, what if all of it were real? What if everything he takes for granted is absolutely 100% based on fact? What a world would it be if all these little legends around us were absolutely real? I couldn't even imagine being wrapped up to wrap my mind around that. And so I knew that the sequel I had already started on would be about finding out that they were werewolves. And it wasn't New Moon, it was closer to Breaking Dawn, because the story had originally skipped beyond high school fairly quickly. But my editor said, well, I'd like to keep the story in high school because we're marketing the first book that way. And I just feel like there's so much that must have happened that we would miss if we skipped Bella growing up. True, I feel like it made sense that they were in high school. Well, you know, I could always make characters talk more. That's not a problem. Let's go back and have this kind of stuff happen earlier. So I had a chance to develop it. By the time I got to Breaking Dawn, the characters were so fleshed out and their allegiances were so strong to whatever they hated or loved that it made the story just a whole lot richer when it came to the second time, because there was so much more backstory to it. Shannon, I have to go back to the point that Jacob exists because Edward couldn't say, I'm a vampire. So Edward is what created the necessity for Jacob, just as Edward's existence and nearness as a vampire made Jacob into a werewolf. I just think it's interesting that there are two characters who are sometimes friends and sometimes not, Stephanie said. Shannon, enemies can't live without each other. They completely are born from each other. Yeah, that would be Stephanie. Jacob was born from Edward also because of, I guess you have to say it was a flaw. Edward's inability to be honest about the essential fact of himself. Although it was an understandable flaw, it was something that he was supposed to keep secret. You know, it wasn't something that you just say in every passing conversation. By the way, I'm a vampire. It's not a normal thing. Jacob's character also became an answer to the deficiencies in Edward, because Edward's not perfect. There were things about him that didn't make him the most perfect boyfriend in the whole world. I mean, some things about him make him an amazing boyfriend, but other things were lacking, and Jacob sort of was the alternative. Here you have Edward, someone who overthinks everything, whose every emotion is outright and just tortures himself. Then there's so much angst, because he has never come to terms with what he is. Then here you have Jacob, someone who never gives anything a passing thought. He's just a happy-go-lucky guy. If something's wrong, well, okay, let's just get over it and move on. Here's someone who's able to take things in stride a little bit more, who doesn't overthink things, someone who's a little rash. He does seem foolish sometimes just because he doesn't pause to think before he leaps, you know? That was sort of the opposite of Edward's character in a lot of ways. It gave balance to the story and a choice for Bella, because I think she needed that. There was an option for her to choose a different life with someone she could have loved, someone she does love. I always felt like that was really necessary to the story, because when I write, I try to make the characters react to things the way I think real people would. I think that in reality, it's never one boy. That's never this moment when you know. There's a choice there, and sometimes it's hard. Romance and relationships are a tangle and this messy thing, and you never know what to expect, and people are so surprised. Shannon. So for you, was the storyline inevitable? Or were there points when you were writing where you thought the characters might have made one choice or another? Stephanie. It's a funny thing because it was inevitable. From the time I started the first sequel, I always knew what was going to happen. With Twilight, I had no idea what was going to happen. It just sort of happened. But after I knew where I was going, I knew Edward and Bella were going out together. And as you start to write stories, you get little twist-offs of things. There are 3 or 4 or 5 different ways it could have gone, and none of them were the right way. I knew what the real way was. But I do know what would have happened if Edward hadn't come back. You know, I know the whole story, how it went down and what their future was. I know that would have happened if this character had changed. And when he did one little thing or that, there was always a million different stories. You just know which one. There's always a million different stories. You just know which one it is that you're going to write. But that doesn't mean the others don't exist. That is good for now. We are finished with episode 4 of the Read With Me, the Illustrated Official Guide of Twilight. Remember, you can find magic wherever you look. Sit back and relax. All you need is a book. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next videos. Bye!